So at the very end of 2023, I did something pretty fun. In December, I did a statistical breakdown of the monster trio compared to one another. So Luffy compared to Zoro compared to Sanji, and I posted that on Twitter for the world to see, and it got a lot of folks yapping. Oh, absolutely. Make no mistake, a lot of yapping, to the point where when I was streaming on Patreon, folks in my chat let me know that Braga on his Twitch stream, him and a few lads were talking about this. So, good times. Because obviously, the cancer, breaking down certain characters' stats in a more fundamental way. So their strength, their stamina, their skills, their hockey, their abilities, and so on and so forth. That is interesting because you really do dive into the minutiae of things. So I really thought about it. But you know what? Let's do a video series on this. Oh!
That lovely.
So we're gonna be milking these udders as much as humanly possible. And I have a few videos planned on this one already. And this one, of course, is focusing on the offensive capabilities of Luffy compared to Zoro compared to Sanji. The thumbnail will be in the same format, and I will update the description box down below for however long this series will continue. So if you like this idea, my content at large, then make sure to, of course, like my video. Hey, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to join the notification squad. Now, let's dive into this head first, and we're gonna talk about the offensive powers of Luffy, once again, compared to Zoro, compared to Sanji. And the three primary categories for this are strength, attack power, and DC, also known as destructive capability or destructive capacity. Essentially, how much can the character destroy? Another way of saying it, though not necessarily, could be their AoE, their area of effect. Though keep in mind that just because you can affect a certain area does not mean that you can destroy that area. So that being said, in the original post, I had Luffy as a 10 in all three categories. Then I had Zoro at a 6 in strength, a 7 in attack power, and a 6 in DC. And then I had Sanji as a 5 in strength, a 6 in attack power, and a 4 in DC. However, after a month, I've made some adjustments, and I decided, here we go, to carte blanche lower Zoro and Sanji. So now in strength, Luffy is again a 10 in all categories, Zoro is a 5, and Sanji is a 4. Attack power, Luffy's a 10, Zoro is a 6, and Sanji is a 5. And then in DC, Zoro is a 5 and Sanji is a 3. Now, some folks may say, hold on now, you're saying that Luffy is twice as strong physically as Zoro? Not necessarily, because I would view it more logarithmically. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, if a 1 were to, let's say, be the same level as destroying an entire city block, 2 wouldn't be destroying 2 city blocks, 2 would be destroying an entire town. And then 3 would be like destroying an entire city, not destroying 2 towns. It's more on an exponential curve, though albeit it's not necessarily consistent, if you get my drift. Luffy being at a 10 and Zoro being at a 5 does not mean that Luffy is twice as strong physically as Zoro. I would argue that Luffy is exponentially stronger than Zoro in terms of physique, especially because of what? The Gear 5. When Luffy awakened, he gained greater physical strength, a tougher body of the Nika. And what he has done in terms of raw physicality, bro, Luffy has displayed far greater physical strength than Zoro, to the point where just simply saying that Luffy is half as strong physically as Zoro, in my mind, doesn't make much sense. We have seen Zoro in the past, in Alabasta, lift up buildings and just like completely throw them at Mr. One. And even though we have seen Zoro do some pretty good things, I think in terms of physical strength, which does make sense since it is pretty well known that Zoro is training on a regular basis all the damn time in the story. I would say his best thing, stalling the conquest of the sea, the combo move by Big Mom and Kaido for a few seconds. I would say it does take a lot of physical strength for Zoro to stall that attack, for damn sure. Of course, he probably has hockey on his swords too, but I still think he needs to have that robust physical strength to just stall that attack no matter what. However, Luffy skips Kaido. No. Keep in mind that Kaido is so massive that when we first see him in dragon form, he is dwarfing every aspect of that town. In the Oden flashback, we literally see Kaido sitting on top of a mountain like it was a toilet seat. Kaido is absolutely gigantic. Last year did a video talking about the strongest attacks in One Piece. Boom, check it out. And we surmised, given the intel we know so far, we surmised that this dude Kaido would be twice the size, the length of the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. And he got skipped. He got skipped. There's no way. No. In terms of physical strength, that is probably one of the nuttiest things I've ever seen ever in One Piece. And keep in mind, that was like Luffy in Gear 5 casual in Gigant form. If he really wanted to, he could have made an open palm version of his Bajrang gun and just grabbed the entire island like a basketball and move it around as if it were a piece on a chessboard. No! Luffy's physical strength is just otherworldly compared to Zoro and Sanji. And Sanji does have cases of actually lifting up large things. Like we do see him lift up that giant cake and then the seal and that whole cart in Whole Cake Island with all those chefs and folks on it with a single leg. So that is a very good lifting feat for Sanji, especially when you know that that cake can even hold up Big Mom's weight. But then on top of that, I would say in the pre-time skip, when the Straw Hats make their final play to finally take out Oars Luffy, and they have that last combo, Sanji is the one that wedges his leg into that giant chain, and then he punts the giant chain around Oars Luffy's body. That, I think, is his best strength feat in the pre-time skip, for sure, in terms of lifting and moving around large objects. Because it's the chain that's used to maintain the giant sail of a ship that's the size of an island, bro. That thing was a nutty strength feat. Of course, him punting Queen, especially in the manga, where in the anime it's not as long, but in the manga, it's like he's going off-world. And Queen's like 20 feet tall, man. The dude's massive. He's tough as hell, and he still got punted that far by Sanji. And I will be honest here, I was strongly, no pun intended, I was strongly considering putting Sanji ahead of Zoro in terms of physical ability, because when Sanji's DNA activates and he unlocks his German attributes, he gets an ability dump, and part of that dump is much greater physical power. But in the case of Zoro, his most substantial buff is Haki related. Haki is a separate component to raw physical power. However, in my personal opinion, I did give Zoro the benefit of the doubt because Zoro is known for constantly honing his physical abilities and his skills. He trains day in and day out. So at this point in time, I said, okay, in terms of raw physical ability, I'll just give Zoro the lead for the time being. And from here, I'll then segue over to attack power. With Sanji and Queen once again, Sanji's able to punt Queen through like 1 or 2 whole levels in Onigashima, and then he gets sent packing like deep off the island. And in that chapter 1035, we see that the explosion that he makes is huge. In that bottom section of the horn, at least a few kilometers, miles wide and long. So these horns are huge. And Sanji punted Queen that distance and that way through another layer of floor. On top of that, in the anime, he doesn't go that far, but the explosion is way bigger in the anime version, and he does shake the entire island. So to me, with Sanji and Queen, it's very similar to Luffy and Doflamingo, where Luffy would do way more damage to Dressrosa if he actually hit the ground with his King Kong gun directly compared to sending Dofi into the ground. And considering how Queen could take attacks from Marco, several of them, but none could put him down, and no signs of any lasting damage that Marco could give Queen. And Sanji was matching that, if not even outpacing Marco's attacks when he was in Devil Lake, not even Ifrit. In Devil Lake, because Sanji calls Queen out on his shenanigans in the previous chapter, 1034, where he was taking lasting damage from his attacks in the Devil Lake. So Sanji's attack power is, I think, for the most part, pretty high in of itself. But once again, when it comes to Zoro and Sanji, I do tend to give Zoro the edge over Sanji offensively. That's why Zoro's a 6 rather than a 5, because fundamentally Sanji focuses on more combo moves, whereas Zoro focuses on like one giant burst move. Though to be fair, in the anime, the beef burst looks a lot better because he does stop his combo midway and then does the attack and then sends Queen flying off of the island. So individually, that attack does look a lot better in the anime, and we already know that his attacks do tend to bypass natural physique because of the heat in combination with the force, which allows him to penetrate in terms of damage right down to the bone. However, Zoro did cut Kaido with his Tatsuki Twister attack. Zoro did force Kaido to dodge his Flying Dragon Blaze, which also cut the horn of Onigashima off in the process. And on top of that, obviously, he did scar Kaido. And even though we're not too sure about, let's say, his Ostrich Dead Man game, the other attacks that we've seen Zoro do against Kaido on the rooftop, we know are weaker compared to what he does against King the Wildfire with the final attack, the 103 Mercies Dragon Damnation. So if Zoro had Conqueror's Haki on all three of his swords, rather than, let's say, just Enma when he scarred Kaido, he might have actually succeeded in putting Kaido on his knees like what he wanted to do in the first place. So fundamentally, I do give Zoro that edge over Sanji. I think it's fair. However, compared to Luffy, compared to Luffy, it's ridiculous, bro. Like, Luffy, the kid is really something crazy. Zoro did force Kaido to dodge the Flying Dragon Blaze, but Luffy also forced Kaido to dodge his Red Hawk, and Luffy called him out on that, like, oh yeah, that was gonna hurt really bad, wasn't it, Kaido? And with Zoro and Enma, you could argue that he's using Conqueror's Haki infusion, but with Luffy, that's just the Rio Haki with the fire of the Red Hawk. And once Luffy gets the Conqueror's Haki infusion, this man just enters a whole new realm of power. I could really argue the power of the Gear 4 Overkong. Oh man. Oh, just think about it right now. The Gear 4 Overkong gun, just. Oh, wow, what a move. But definitively, it is Gear 5, where he just clears again. He does have those attacks that just bend people's bodies. And it really does feel like he's doing massive internal organ damage when he hits you with those shots. And we see on the case here with Rob Lucci, where Rob Lucci gets three-pieced by Luffy. He takes a mole pistol, he takes a Dawn Whip, and then finally a Dawn Rocket. And Lucci, who we know is tough, where is this force coming from? Luffy is, I think, bypassing a lot of defenses when he just punches someone and their body gets rubberfied in the process, because their organs are not supposed to be rubbery like that. So it's gotta be massive damage internally. And I'm not talking about even slapping on the Rio Haki he's learned, which does even more added internal, it's just nasty. It's just nasty with Luffy's attack powers. I have a hard time right now seeing Sanji and Zoro have attacks that are just as strong as the Dawn Rocket. I'll keep it a stack. Because if Luffy wanted to, he could slap on the Conqueror's Haki on that thing. Oh, disgusting. Disgusting. The same thing would apply for the White Star gun too. To say that Zoro or Sanji would have attacks that equaled the White Star gun is to say that they'd have attacks that could one tap, stun lock, and Admiral.
Oh, hell no.
No, no. Come the end of this decade, maybe. But right now, no. And even though Kizaru's getting back up right now, for sure, stun locking an Admiral, the way Luffy did, is just outrageous. And none of these attacks come even close to the Bajrang gun. Oh, the Bajrang gun is gnarly as hell. Especially in the anime, where we saw Zoro and Sanji get anime-only buffs, which were gnarly for their Queen and Sanji and King and Zoro fights. But the Kaido and Luffy fight, Luffy with the Bajrang gun is able to repeatedly slam his fist multiple times with the Bajrang gun. And the Bajrang gun even expands and gets bigger in the anime. It's like putting a whole island on a chaining ball and just repeatedly slamming it. There's just no way. I would say, because again, my video I did last year about the strongest attacks in One Piece, once again, Jafar, boom, thank you. I would say that fundamentally, if Luffy's attack power is either at least or at most in the ballpark of multi-continental, at least in theory, in principle, then Zoro would be, let's say, somewhere in the ballpark of country, large country, small country, and then Sanji was to be in the ballpark of multi-island island, something of that sort. Even though Zoro and Sanji have phenomenal attack power, and they've shown that, Luffy's just stupid. Luffy is just, in terms of attack power, he is gapping the two by a substantial margin. However, there is, I suppose, maybe some sort of out in terms of Zoro versus Rob Lucci, because a Dawn Rocket, without, as far as I can tell, without Haki or even Conqueror's Haki on it, could effectively take out Rob Lucci after a Dawn Whip and a Mo pistol in the previous chapter. And Zoro has been fighting Rob Lucci longer than Luffy has fought against Kizaru. In fact, as of this chapter I've read, that's still ongoing. It's hard to say that it's gonna be a one shot because we haven't seen much of that fight at all. However, if we do see, let's say, Rob Lucci get put down by Zoro with one of Zoro's mid-level attacks, like let's say it's a Rashomon or a Samon or a Black Robe Dragon Twister, one of those moves puts down Rob Lucci for good, that would of course only give more credence to the more powerful attacks that Zoro has. So I can see folks saying I should now raise Zoro a little bit higher in, let's say, this chart compared to Luffy. But my argument then would always be, hold on now, did Luffy use Haki or not when he used the Dawn Rocket? Because if he just uses Haki on the Dawn Rocket, the power of that attack goes up. Armor Haki, the Rio Haki, Conqueror's Haki, I mean, my God. So wouldn't just, let's say, depend on Zoro's performance against Rob Lucci, but also I want to say it depends on the anime too. Where if the anime does show Luffy beating Rob Lucci and he has Conqueror's Haki on that attack, it does add needed clarity and it does lower the ceiling for the power potential of that attack. But that could be then a way of closing the gap between Zoro and Luffy in terms of attack power at least slightly. Not, honestly, I'll be real with you, not by that much, because the Dawn Rocket is not even close to the same level as the Boss Rank Gun. And then finally, you have destructive capability. Again, it's not close. This right here is less theory driven, like attack power. Luffy was clearly on pace to destroy the entire island of Onigashima in a single attack. And Luffy is stronger in principle now than he was back then. And in the anime, they don't skimp on the speed, the velocity of Luffy's punch at all when him and Kaido begin their clash. And the shockwaves are just titanic. Makes you wonder how on God's green earth did these people in the capital not feel or see anything. It's ridiculous. But that being said, in Oda's notes in the Road to Laugh Tale, Oda literally states that the shockwaves between those two attacks would span for 1,000 miles. Half of Australia. And that's just the shockwave. Luffy, in terms of DC, I think could level a whole country. Honest to God. By comparison, I can see someone like Zoro being able to, let's say, cut a whole island in half. Not like a massive country-sized island, like an Alabasta or Drum Island or I mean, God forbid, a wild country. No. More like of the same scale of Zunisha, where Zunisha would be roughly around the size of the island of Manhattan. He did cut the horn of Onigashima off. He did do that, and he has much more powerful attacks than that for sure. In principle, doing the horn a few times over is not hard to believe. Though in Zoro's case, ultimately, I think it'll depend on range, and if Zoro would be capable of having his attack span that sort of distance to cut it appropriately. Because that was an issue with Pika in Dressrosa, which is why he needed Orlumbus, because Pika was outside of Zoro's range. But I'll dive more into that in a future video. In Sanji's situation, in Sanji's case, we saw with the beef burst, the explosion. We saw how huge it was compared to the horn, and the horn, again, like I said before, is several miles and kilometers thick and long. In the anime, it's even bigger, and he shakes the whole island. But Sanji's issue is that, unlike Zoro, and let's say Luffy, who can, let's say, just do it at face value. Sanji has to probably kick something or someone into something, and that's how you get the main bulk of Sanji's DC. So let's say compared to Zoro, if Zoro can, let's say, cut the whole island in half, Sanji could just break apart, blow away a whole section of the island, but not the entire island itself. Or let's say a whole mountain range, or large mountain range, is just going down in a single kick. And Sanji does have the evidence, the feats to prove that at the bare minimum. But even still, Sanji and Zoro, nah, bro. They just they just can't compare to the monkey massive Nika. That is my stance on the Monster Trio in terms of their offensive powers compared to one another. Their strength, their attack power, and their DC. And that is as of the latest chapter One Piece 1103, I believe so. But let me know. Let me know your stance on this subject matter at hand with a comment in the comment section down below. The series will continue on, and next time we go from offense to defense. So please do be on the lookout. Once again, make sure to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoy my content, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys on the flip side.
See you. Bye-bye.